What are training tools? Let's break it down a little bit. What are tools? Well, tools, without using a dictionary definition, if we just look at the concept of tools, what are tools? Tools are devices that give us leverage in any area of life. I'm not specifically talking about dog training here. I'm talking about in general. What are tools? They're devices that give you leverage, that make the doing easier. So if we expand on that a little bit, we can see that in every area of life, the tools that we use at the time evolve as time goes by. And this is how technology works. The tools get better. The tools give us more leverage. The tools make the activity a lot easier. They cut the time. They essentially decrease the delay. And so the more technology advances in every area, the better things become for the human. That's if you are a construction worker, if you're a carpenter. Being a carpenter today is a lot easier. Physically, it's a lot easier than it was 20 to 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Being a carpenter now, you have tools that give you a lot more leverage than the tools we had available 50 to 100 years ago. So this is how technology works. And this is how the tools gave us the leverage in just the area of carpentry, as an example. Now, humans have really embraced technology in every area. Okay, we like technology. We like it when things become easier for us. It doesn't mean we're lazy. It just means why not use the technology available to make our lives easier? Right? You could, as a contractor, as a construction worker, you could bring your 20-foot aluminum ladder to every paint job, climb up the top of that 20-foot ladder, paint the span of about 10 feet, right? 5 feet on your left, 5 feet on your right, then climb down that ladder and move the ladder another 5 feet, another 5 to 10 feet, and then repeat the process and do that over and over again. Or you could use technology and you could use tools that make it easier for you to go up, move over, paint, move over a little bit more, all at the push of a button. I'm using an example here in just that area, just to give you a visual. But in general, this is what us humans do. We embrace the technology. Even on a phone, the phones we used to have available before, I remember when I was a kid, having the rotary phones, and then having the phones with the keypads, right, with the touch buttons. The actual buttons, not the touch screens, but the actual buttons. I remember that. And then I remember the buttons the telephones that were not connected to a wire. I remember when the phones you could have the phone in your hand and walk around. Then that was an advancement in technology. We've gone from the rotary phones to cell phones. We've gone to the touch screens. This is how much we like technology. However, in dog training, it just seems to be the area where humans resist technology. Have you noticed that? In dog training, we just, as a whole, we're so skeptical of technology. We just as a whole, we want to be stuck on the way it was done 50 years ago, because we use the excuse of it worked 50 years ago, We can still do it the same way. I do it the same way. I don't need that. Can you imagine if we use that logic for something else? We use that logic for electrical work. We use that if a contractor used that logic. Can you imagine that? If the contractor said, this is how we put a house together. This is how we did a frame, an entire frame. This is how we framed the wall. This is how we basically put a house up from the ground up 50, 80 years ago, just with the claw hammer and the nails. This is how we did it 50 years ago. We can do it the same exact way. We don't need all the fancy stuff. We don't need the pneumatic nail guns. It doesn't make sense, and you're not going to hear people say that. But in dog training, this happens to be an area where we're skeptical of technology. Real quick, before I continue, I just want to let you know that if you are liking this episode and you like the topic that I'm talking about and you have a topic that you would like me to discuss, let me know. Send me a message, comment, give me a suggestion, and I'm more than happy to expand on that topic. So here's the thing about training tools, or tools in general. Now we're going to talk about dog training specifically. When it comes to dog training and the use of tools that a lot of people seem to be reluctant to embrace, very resistant to embrace the technology. The reason why that happens is we obsess over the dog's emotional, mental state. I'm not suggesting we don't pay attention to it. I'm not suggesting we don't care about it. But the problem is when we obsess over it. And here's what I mean by that. You'll see people that sometimes will look at a video or even just look at somebody training in real time. And the person, okay, not the person working with the dog, but the person sitting on the sidelines watching, or the person watching the video, will scrutinize every little micro expression that dog gives. They'll go, oh, the dog stuck its tongue out. Oh, the dog did. Look at the ear. The ear did this. Now, paying attention to the dog's body language is very important. I definitely agree with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being very aware of the dog's body language. I want to make sure that if I'm doing something, the dog is giving me feedback, right? If the dog looks freaking like something is just not clicking, then definitely I'm going to change my approach. But I'm talking about the obsession. Even if the dog is generally speaking going, I get this, I understand this. Yeah, I get what you're trying to do. But there's like little micro expressions here and there which are normal in the learning process a lot of times. Okay, when you're learning something, you're focused, you're paying attention. So sometimes your body language shows a little bit of, not necessarily 100% fun. Like you're actually focusing and you're paying attention. And sometimes that focus can be misconstrued as, oh my gosh, you're sad right now. No, I'm just focused. I'm just so enthralled in the process at hand. I'm so present that these little micro expressions are not really telling the whole story. But this is what people do with dogs. So look at every little thing. And so they just obsess over these micro expressions. And the other thing too is the bar for dog owners has been raised so high. And this is done by the industry at large. This is done by other dog owners. This is done by dog trainers, by pet professionals. The bar has been raised so high for the average dog owner They expect, okay, dog trainers, dog people, pet professionals, even TV personalities, they just expect the dog owners to be incredibly savvy and just body language experts and dog training experts with their dogs. That's how much the bar has been raised. And even by people that don't even know what they're doing themselves. They'll raise the bar really high. The standard has been raised so high that the average dog owner just has no chance. They cannot meet that bar. It'd be like somebody expecting me to know the ins and outs of every piece, every moving part of my vehicles, and I don't know. That's why I go to the mechanic. I have no idea. I have no interest in learning. Right? Does my car run good? If it's not, is it something fairly simple enough that I can address quickly to save myself some time? If it's not, I'm going to take it to a mechanic. I don't care to learn. Okay? So it's the same thing with dogs. Like, people just have this unrealistic expectation of what the owner should know. And this is one of the reasons why, in general, humans are very skeptical of technology. When I talk about technology and training tools, I'm talking about all the different training tools, okay? I'm talking about certain collars. I'm talking about electronic collars. Tools are just everything, okay? Just like in various areas of our daily lives, everything you do, if there's any profession that you yourself engage in, there are tools that you're going to use that are good for some things and not good for other things. And there are tools that fit the bill a little bit better depending on what task you're working on at the moment. And it's the same thing with training tools. So this is why people have a problem with that. So the solution is embrace technology. Now, it's easy to be skeptical of technology or tools that you don't understand. Okay, if you don't understand it, you're going to be skeptical. So it'd be like, have you ever seen these movies where a nail gun is used as a weapon? There's a lot of movies where that happens. Movies, TV shows. It's just in about every action movie where somebody is just running away from the bad guy, and they happen to run into a construction site, and then they pick up a nail gun and they start using the nail gun as a weapon. So they start aiming the nail gun at the bad guys or at the people, and they just start shooting, and just nails just come flying out of a nail gun. When in reality, that doesn't happen unless you push the little release at the very front of the nail gun. You can push that trigger. You're not gonna project out nails out of that thing just because you're aiming. It's not like a gun, right? There's a certain mechanism where if you have to press the nail gun against the surface, this pushes a little release button on the front of the nail gun, and that's when the nail gun gets released. But based on some of these movies, it will lead you to believe that nail guns are just these very scary freaking things. Now imagine if the average homeowner decided, I do a lot of hammering, I do a lot of building on the side, and I think a nail gun would probably make my life a lot easier, but I don't want to accidentally shoot somebody with it. Imagine if they had that thought, that little conversation, because of what they saw or because of what they've heard. Imagine somebody else told them that, I know, I've seen in movies that the nail guns, you can shoot them and nails will come out flying, and then they'll kill somebody, right? And then they tell you, they don't even understand how to use a nail gun, but they tell you about it, and now you don't even understand. So you are thinking, whoa, if they do that, I don't want to use a nail gun. And then you and your neighbor go, you know what's safest? And you know what's worked for like a very long time, for decades, and probably like 100 years ago or more? You know what's worked really well? Hammers. A hammer is not gonna throw out a nail gun. It's not going to shoot somebody from 100 feet away with a nail. So let's just stick to the hammer. People don't act like that. But if they did, you would imagine why. There's been a bit of a scare. There's been some miscommunication. There's been some propaganda. There's been some misinterpretation of the nail gun in this particular example. And so this prevents a person from even using something that would cut their time that they do the project, would cut the time by half. So how does that person get over that and take full advantage of the tool? Well, they learn about the tool. They embrace the technology. And I say learn how to use it. They realize it's actually not as scary as the movies make it out to be. Certainly not as scary as my neighbor told me it was. That's how you lose fear of the tools. You actually just learn about it. It does take a little bit of a choice. Now, if you're so easily emotionally manipulated, then yes, you're probably not going to even try, because in your mind, you're so concerned about possibly, heaven forbid, your dog lick its lips. Heaven forbid, one of their ears kind of drops to the side momentarily, because you're so obsessed with their micro expressions that you don't even want to imagine even possibly running the risk of even momentarily hurting their feelings over something that you could learn how to use. You're so obsessed with that, but you notice that your dog doesn't care about your feelings. Your dog doesn't obsess over your well-being. Now you might think, well, I'm the human, he's my dog. It is my job to take care of him. And I agree 1,000%. My problem is not with wanting to take care of your dog. My problem is not with wanting to look out for their well-being. My problem is with obsessing over little things. Look, if you had to be an expert, imagine if you had to go to Home Depot to buy certain things that you've never done before. You're like, I'm going to get these tools. I'm going to work my fence. I have to fix my fence. And so I need some wire cutters, and I need some T-posts. I need a T-post driver. And imagine if there was a barrier to entry at Home Depot. You went to Home Depot and they were to go, do you know how to use a T-post driver? Have you ever used one? No. Did you take a class? No. Well, then you can't buy one. Right? Or imagine somebody telling you shouldn't buy a T-post driver, any T-post or any wire cutters, because you've never taken it. You're not an expert. So how do you figure out how to work on your fence? Is you get the wire, you get the wire cutters, you get the T-post, you get the T-post driver, and you get to work, right? And yes, in the beginning, it's not gonna be your best. The T-posts are gonna be crooked. Your fence is gonna be kind of zigzagging a little bit. But what's gonna happen is, as you keep doing whatever project you're working on, you'll get better and better, and it gets easier and it gets easier, and it looks cleaner and it looks cleaner, and it gets better and it gets better. You don't just go, well, I'm not good at it, so I'm not even gonna do it. So I don't even want to mess with this. Well, you don't do that. So with training tools, a lot of it is the same way. The people that expect you to be the people that expect dog owners to be experts, and they're like, oh no, you really need to like be an expert at this. If you have no idea how to use it, don't even think about it. And I'm not suggesting being crazy and just grabbing all these tools and putting them all in your dog today, and then just freaking running through the reps, going through the motions the same day. But I'm saying, just don't be afraid to explore these. Don't be afraid to learn about these tools. Get some training. Talk to somebody who knows how to use them. But that's how you get over that. And once you realize that using technology makes your life easier, it's a game changer. It's for your dog. For your dog's sake also, okay? And so as you learn this, one of the best ways to learn it is to learn it from people who know how to use them. Now, if you have access to a dog trainer, that's the best bet. Now, everybody has access to the internet. It's right in your pocket. You pull out your phone, you go to just one of your website browsers, or you go to your YouTube app. You type in the search bar, how to train a dog to, to sit. How do you train a dog to not charge at the door? How to work on my dog when it wants to do that. It is definitely a start. Yes, you're going to get pages upon pages upon pages from different people with different methodologies, different beliefs about life, different beliefs about dog training. And it is going to take a little bit of time. It definitely is like drinking from a fire hose, but because you're looking at multiple content creators, multiple dog trainers, it's like drinking from multiple fire hoses. So it is going to take a little bit of research. The next thing that you could do, which is actually even better, is you contact a dog trainer that can use these tools. There is evidence that they can use those tools, and their dogs, or the dogs that they have worked with, look the way you will like your dog to look. If you can find a trainer, there is evidence, okay, whether it's through video or whether it's through demos. But if you find a dog trainer, you look at their dog, and their dog looks the way you wish your dog looked, this is a person that you can contact. And if the person is using a certain tool, then it's very likely that that person knows how to use that tool to get the results that you want. So to learn how to use that tool, one of the best things to do is to learn from an actual person, because then in that instance, you're not learning from multiple content creators / dog trainers that don't even know you. Now you're possibly talking to somebody who actually knows you, who actually can get information about your dog and about your situation. This person might know how to get your dog to do the things that their dogs are doing that you wish your dog could do. This is one of the best ways to learn how to use these tools, to embrace these tools, this technology that could make your life easier. Do not try to learn it from people who don't use them. It doesn't make sense. If I don't know how to take out an engine or a transmission and then fix a transmission, if I've never done that and I only have a mild idea of how it's done, don't try to learn it from me. Don't come to me and ask me, hey, how do you replace a transmission? How to replace a muffler? How do you flush a radiator? How do you replace a radiator? For some of you guys, okay, you might go, oh, I've done that. That's easy. But to me, I'm not going to tell you. Now, if I try to tell you how to do that, if I try to tell you, hey, this is how you replace your entire AC system in your car. Okay, I can tell you how to change a tire. I've done that. But I'm not going to tell you, hey, this is how you replace a transmission. How do you know? Well, I think I know. I think I've seen it. I've heard about it. So you should just do it. You're not going to do that. It would make no sense. You'd be like, dude, if you've never done it, I'm not going to listen to you. But for some reason, we do that with dog training. We do that with people who don't know the things that we want to know. Okay, and a lot of it is look at evidence. Stop it with the talking. Okay, it's ironic because I am talking right now, but if you go to my YouTube channel, I've got tons of videos of the actual work that I do. So it's not just talk. Okay, I'm pretty decent at what I do. I not only train pet dogs, I also do competition. One of my dogs got to the highest level in PSA, so he got PSA 3. Which is very freaking difficult. Again, and I'm not using that as this is why you should listen to me. If you look at my YouTube channel, I got so many videos of plenty of dogs, plenty of breeds, doing things that you very likely, if you're a dog owner, you will very likely go, I would like my dog to learn how to do those things. So I understand a thing or two about some of these tools. But if I didn't, there'd be no evidence of that. Nowhere. It'd just be me talking, not showing anything that I can do. So you wouldn't want to learn from me because there is no evidence. Right? Or you would have every right to be skeptical. I can't tell you or show you how to build a rocket. I've never done that. So why would you listen to a person? This is where dog owners sometimes, they mean well. They really care about their dogs. But when dog owners listen to other dog trainers that don't use training tools, a dog trainer will say, don't use an e-collar. They're horrible. Have you ever used one? No. Do you know how to use one? No, I would never use one. But the same person will tell you, don't use an e-collar. Do you see the irony of that? Do you see the logic in that? You wouldn't take that advice from a carpenter, right? Or a contractor. These analogies are great. I know I'm using them a lot, but I'm just trying to pull you away from something you really understand to try to get you to look at it from a different perspective so you can really take your emotions out of it, make it less personal. This is why these analogies help you out, because it's not close to home anymore. You can see it logically from a different perspective in a way that it doesn't have any emotional attachment to you. This is why the analogies are great. Now go back to the way you're looking at things in your world and realize that from a different perspective, somebody is seeing the same way that you were looking at the other example, and they're feeling the same exact way. It doesn't make sense to me when a dog owner or a novice dog trainer listens to another dog trainer that has zero experience with training tools telling you shouldn't use a training tool. It's like the example I gave earlier of the neighbor trying to tell you that you should never use a nail gun because you might kill somebody. You see, from my perspective, and probably from your perspective, you would look at that example and you would go, that is ridiculous. Why are you listening to a person that's never used a nail gun, that their only understanding of a nail gun is whatever they've seen in a movie, and they're terrified that the nail gun might kill somebody, and now they're telling you shouldn't because what they saw in a movie, and then you're going to listen to that? It doesn't make sense. You'd be better off listening to a contract or somebody who is skilled at using the nail gun, because they would tell you, hey, no, actually, you're not going to kill anybody, because there are mechanisms in place that make it incredibly difficult for you to do that. Like, you would have to try really, really hard to do the worst case scenario. So again, for the other areas of various human endeavors, we don't look at it that way. But in dog ownership, that's when all the logic goes right down the toilet, and it doesn't make sense. So step out, look at it from a different perspective, and learn from somebody who knows how to use these tools. And real quick, if you are enjoying this episode, hit the like button, give me a comment, and share it with somebody else. Okay, so now I also want to talk about the proper training tools. There's different training tools in dog training. We have leash. A leash is a tool. A clicker is a tool. A harness is a tool. A slip collar or a prong collar or a star mark collar or a martingale, like a nylon martingale collar, or even a flat buckle collar is a tool. An electronic collar is a tool. A toy could be a tool, because we could use it to encourage a dog to engage in a particular behavior. So these are tools. These are training tools. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that these tools, they're not they're not the jack of all trades necessarily. One of the things that you see a lot is you see a lot of dog owners using a harness to walk their dog and then wonder why their dogs are pulling. This is a very common phenomenon. Most of the clients that I work with, this is what they do, right? They walk their dogs on a harness because they truly don't. It's not that they're dumb. It's not that they're just stupid. That's nothing to do with that. They genuinely don't know. I'll give you an example. Like I've another analogy. This is a real example, a real story. So I've I got 5 acres and I got a bunch of trees and I got a chainsaw. So when I trim some of my trees, I'll use the chainsaw. I'll cut some of the big branches, and I've cut some of the trees that are, they're in the way. They're not really serving a whole lot of a purpose. So there are trees that we can live without, or we just trim some big branches. And then once I trim the big branches, I cut them into pieces, and then I get them ready to split, right, for the fireplace. So what I did this is very pertinent to the topic at hand. I got an axe, right? I got an axe, and I started chopping these pieces to split these logs so that they're ready for the fireplace. When I've done it for like a few years now. I've done it actually probably even longer than that. Right? So I cut the trees or the branches with the chainsaw, get them into big chunks, and then I split them with the axe. Well, there've been plenty of times where I'm like, man, like how do people do this? It is so exhausting. It's a good workout, but it's freaking a lot. I can chop the cedar trees easy because the wood is a softer wood, but when I have oak, I have a really hard time with it. So I'm just chopping and freaking going at it. And I'm splitting them, but it's taking a lot of work. Well, I recently learned that there are different types of axes. There are chopping axes and there are splitting axes. And I didn't know this, so I've been using a chopping axe to split, which is not the purpose of the chopping axe. So the chopping axe, right? It's primarily made so that you could cut the branches of the limb. So this is where you cut it. You kind of whack at the whack the probably using horrible terminology here, but this is how you hit the tree trunks, and you hit it from an angle. You make that V, and then you do that from the side. You make that V, and then you chop the tree down. That's what that axe is for. But then the splitting axes are more built like sledgehammers. So the axe themselves, the cheeks on the axe are actually thicker. They're bigger. So they have more weight behind them. So essentially, it's like a big hammer, okay, like a sledgehammer with one end of it being incredibly sharp. So these axes, because the cheeks are wider, they're ideal for splitting. So when you use the right axe to split, you don't have to work as hard as you would if you were using a chopping axe. That one little difference, they're both axes, but just not knowing that could save you so much effort. And I know this from personal experience. So what do people do? People do the same exact thing with dog training. What people do is they'll use a harness to walk their dog, and then they wonder why it's so difficult to walk their dog. They don't realize that the harness that they're using is intended to facilitate pulling. So it makes pulling easier. And by default, walking them harder. It makes walking harder, right? So that one little thing, just not knowing that, okay, this is where tools are great for what they're designed for. And if you start mix and matching them, you then start suffering. I use harnesses. I have harnesses for my dogs, but I use them when I want them to pull. When I want them to pull, I'm freaking putting them on a harness. I want them to go insane. Another one, it's the same thing with the flat buckle collar. Okay, this is a little bit less obvious because collars are just widely misunderstood. So 99% of people all over the world are using just regular buckle collars. They're clipping the leash to those buckle collars. And yes, in a lot of instances, the dogs are okay with it. But for some dogs, the combination of the flat buckle collar with a little bit of tension on the leash automatically encourages them to pull. Once again, I have flat collars, and when I want my dogs to be insane, I put them on the flat collars because I want them to be crazy. I want them to be insane. This is how understanding the tools can be beneficial to you or they can hurt you. So understanding the tool, the right tool for the right job is important. Okay? Look, if I give you a paintbrush and I tell you, here's this paintbrush, now go ahead and change those spark plugs, you're going to have a hell of a time changing the spark plugs with the paintbrush. The paintbrush is an amazing tool for painting. And even painters will tell you there are different kinds of paintbrushes for different types of applications. There are different types of wrenches for different types of applications. There are even different types of hammers for different types of applications. Using the wrong hammer for the wrong purpose will make your life really hard. You want to put a big stake on the ground and I give you a ball peen hammer, you could do it, but it's going to be a little bit harder. If I give you the same stake to drive into the ground and I give you a 9-pound hammer, you're going to have an easier time. If I ask you to put some rivets on a leather craft and I give you a sledgehammer, you're going to have a really hard time with that. So the tools really are beneficial when you understand them. If you don't understand them, this is where people get all confused, get reluctant to learn, get very skeptical. And then, of course, people are terrified to make any sort of mistakes on your dog. So here's the thing. If you work with your dog, if you own your dog, even if you don't train your dog, the fact that you're living with your dog, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do the wrong thing. They're going to learn the wrong thing. So you trying to avoid making mistakes on your dog, it doesn't make sense. You're already making tons of mistakes. You might as well get going on the right track, get the right tool for the right job, learn from the right person, and realize that, yes, in the learning process, you are going to make mistakes. But guess what? You're already making mistakes as a dog owner. So mistakes are unavoidable. The question is, which mistakes are getting you closer to getting your dog to where you want it to be? Now, the other thing, this is for the dog trainers that go, oh, I don't need these tools. I don't need that. I got my dog to do this great without ever having to use that. And my response to that is, that's great. If it worked out for you, that's amazing. And it probably worked out for you because of a couple of things. One, you have a dog with a temperament that made it easier for you to not utilize these tools. It'd be like me going back to my axe example. Look, you give me a cedar trunk. I can split that cedar trunk. I can split it all day long easily with just one hit. Okay, I can split it with one hit. With the wrong axe, I can split it all day long with very little effort. Especially if that trunk is, think about this, you might not understand this about trees, but cedar trees, they don't get very thick, right? They're not as big as some of the other types of trees, like the oak trees. They get big. The trunks get massive. So you give me a cedar trunk that is not that big in diameter. Not only is it not that big in diameter, but it's a soft wood. And I use a chopping axe. I'm gonna split that all day long, no problem. So it'd be like me telling you, hey, no, that's not true. You can use this axe for everything, because I used it and I was able to split cedar with no effort. So you should be able to do it with your 3-foot diameter oak tree. You should be able to split a trunk that is 3 to 5 feet in diameter and it's oak, because I did it with a cedar trunk that was only about a foot in diameter, and it was cedar, so it was a softwood. So I did it with that. So you should be able to do it with your oak trunk. You should be able to split that with no problem with the same axe that I used, because I did it. That means you could do it too. It doesn't make sense, right? So again, this is why the analogy is great. It allows you to step out of your world and see the example that I'm giving you, and you could probably understand why, yeah, that does make sense, right? The tree that you're splitting is different than the tree somebody else might be splitting. Exactly. So you understand that. You understand that in that example. Now we're going to flip it and we're going to put it in the dog example. The people who say, I was able to train my dog without ever having to use that. Well, you had a different type of dog than the lady down the street with her dog that weighs like 120 pounds and is incredibly impulsive. So we are not comparing the same type of dog. So this is why. But if it worked for you and you're happy and your dog is happy and your dog is reliable and you have full confidence that your dog is reliable and your dog has all the freedom and you did it without X, Y, and Z tool, that's wonderful. I'm happy for you. That's amazing. I'm talking about the average dog owner who is not a dog trainer, who's not obsessed with dog training, who hasn't read dozens of books, who hasn't watched hundreds of videos, who hasn't gone to conferences. I'm talking about those dog owners, the ones that have full-time jobs, the ones that their career is not dog training. Those are the people I'm talking about. So if it worked for you, great. I'm not going to judge you. Just don't judge the people that are considering it, because they don't have the same type of dog that you have. They don't have the same type of interest that you have. And this is why you need to be understanding of that. I'm going to give you some quick testimonials here. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples. I had this one of my favorite examples. I've had a bunch of these very similar, but this is one of the most recent ones. I had a client that was literally about to be evicted because her big, scary dog was just charging at everything. Okay, that lived in an apartment complex. And her dog was just charging. It was charging at people, it was charging at dogs. It was a nice dog, but it just had this one little issue. It just had this problem. Now, when she came to me, she was desperate. She was like, I don't know what to do. I'm about to get kicked out. And this is just becoming a big problem, and we need to fix this. And the dog is not a puppy. The dog is an adult, and it's a big dog. So when we started working together, we're like, we got to fix this ASAP. We don't have 4 months to, this is where people sometimes go, oh, you need to really, you need to fix the relationship. You need to really bond. You need to really understand what is happening. You should really get to know. There's something you're just not understanding about your dog. Your dog doesn't trust you, or there's just not the right bond. You need to understand what's triggering that. No, we don't have time for that. At that moment, that lady needed the right tool. She wasn't using the right tools. She needed the right tool. What was the right tool? The right tool was something that gave her leverage ASAP. She needed somebody right away to tell her, this is the tool you need right now. Okay, this is what we're going to use. We're going to be focusing on your dog's well-being and the exercise and all of that. We definitely tackled that. The mental exercise, we gave it the mental exercise that it wasn't getting because that was a big factor. The physical exercise, we're going to give you the physical exercise that the dog is not getting because that was also a big factor. We didn't ignore that. We addressed it. But we also were like, we need a tool right now. So there was no BSing around. It wasn't like, so let's spend 2 hours talking about every little single detail of your day. Even though we spent a decent amount of time going over that, we were not doing like chats, and we were not just pondering and trying to just understand every facet of this dog's day, every area of their day, and what could possibly going on, who were their previous owners, what did they do. We're like, okay, we will understand that as we get to know the dog more, as we get to work with the dog. Right now, we need physical exercise that needs to go up tremendously. The mental exercise needs to go up tremendously. But as of right now, to make sure you don't get kicked out of your apartment, make sure you don't lose your dog, we need these tools. We need leverage, and we need it right now. We started working in that same day. Okay, that same day, this lady and her dog were in a much, much better place than they were before they came to visit me. The changes wasn't dramatic because it was one day. Give us a break here. It wasn't like the dog was just amazingly just 180-degree turn, but right away that same day, we got the dog to chill out on the charging at everything. And so the following week, so the next lesson a week later, I'm still staying in touch. How's it going? How's he doing? He's actually doing much better. Wonderful. Next week, we're going to work on the same thing. We're going to raise the criteria. And so a lot of it was, here's the leverage you need. Here's the leverage you need. We're also going to work on the mental stimulation. We're going to work on the physical stimulation. That's very important. But here's what you need to do different. This tool that you've been using, it's got to go. Here's the tool you need to use, and I'm going to show you how to use it because I'm proficient in this particular tool. I know it's the best tool for your situation, and we did that every time. We always up the criteria. The dog learned some manners because ultimately that's what it boils down to. We didn't need to understand what dream the dog might have had when it was a young dog, what could have happened, what experiences he had that was triggering these things. We're like, no, dude, listen, I know you don't know, but you are in a really bad situation. You don't have no idea what it is because we can't communicate that to you. But just know that if you get caught charging at a dog or a person, you're going to live in the streets. They're going to have to give you up. They're going to have to bring it to a shelter because they'll have no room for you. So we were able to address that. The dog did much better, and the client was just incredibly happy because she was given the right tool, the right knowledge, the right tutoring, the right information, the right coaching, and the dog also learned. And I have so many stories like this, incredibly rewarding to me as a dog trainer. If you're a dog trainer, you probably have a bunch of these stories, and I hope you really do. Whichever way you do it, I hope you do. If you're a new dog trainer, I hope that you get these stories because they really help you see how needed your skills are to a lot of these people that don't know what they're doing.